Hey, everybody. CodePen Radio 429. I got Alex with me. What's up, Alex?
What's up? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, of course. You can be on your own podcast anytime you want, you know? You actually titled this one, which I think you had like a good instinct for it, which I feel like sometimes our titles are a little lackluster. This one's got a banger title. Why CodePen rebuilt its real time. I like it when there's like a question in a title like that. You're like, why did CodePen rebuild its real time systems?
Intrigue.
Yeah. It builds some intrigue. Anyway, we did that for what, like the fourth time or something?
Oh my goodness. It's an embarrassing number of times, I'll be honest. The number of real-time connection solutions that I've tried are far too many. And you know, we've gone back and forth. We tried to use I think it's called WebSocket OS or something.
You're going back even further than our notes, like the earliest time. But here's the, like, just so people understand, real time just means like two computers talking to each other immediately. For example, without having to like refresh the page. Like obviously a server can talk to a client, but you have two clients open at the same time. You know, I don't know, like any modern video game. Obviously, there's like stuff flying across the network and two clients are talking to each other. But that requires special technology on the web. You don't get that like not really for free on the web. There's some core technologies there that you can use, but you've got work to do if you're talking about doing real-time communication between two clients on the web. So this whole conversation, we're going to be talking about that. It's kind of been your thing since the beginning. And I think the earliest ones that the idea is that very early on, we wanted to offer a thing we called collab mode, and then later a thing called professor mode, which Bob, don't worry about that one. But collab mode was like, it's two people coding at the same time. Like it is what you think it is.
It's exactly what you think it is. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we started back in the day with, that was kind of a pro feature that we've always supported. And it also supported professor mode where you were able to kind of connect and watch someone else code. It was like
one-way collab mode, but it was meant to like broadcast out to lots, like the limits were higher because it was one way and stuff. And then, believe it or not, I'm sure you remember this, but maybe not everyone at CodePen would. We had chat for a long time. We had chat.
Oh my goodness!
We just slapped it in there, baby.
That's Boom. A little PTSD there. Yeah.
You want a little chat? Yeah. Here you go.
Yeah, I think that made sense in professor mode, where like you're watching someone code, and then they'd have to like message the professor.
Because we never did audio. They couldn't listen, so you had to have some way. If you're like, hey, I don't know.
This was a pre-Zoom world, I have to say. Yeah. Like, it wasn't as common at the time, so we did add that to our little solution there.
Yeah, no big regrets, but that's the kind of thing that just needs to be real-time. And people just assume it these days. Like, I don't know, I definitely feel like that now. There was definitely internal discussions that were like that. Like, a lot of your app just needs to be real-time to feel like it's born as modern software.
Yeah, just as a modern app. I mean, you take it for granted now, right? On every app, sometimes, you know, in Notion, Word docs, it used to be only like Google Docs had something so fancy. And now it's just everywhere because it's just come a long way and it's so useful.
Yeah. It used to be that was almost a startup thing. You know, it was like, it's Google Docs for dog walking or whatever, because people, when they say that,
real-time dog walking thing. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it would be a very special feature. I remember for a long time we used Trello because it had real-time Kanbaning, right? Like it would update in real time. So that was a distinguishing feature that you looked for. It wasn't, before things got as mature as they are today. It wasn't.
Yeah, people
everywhere.
Would choose software just because it had it, you know.
Right.
And now it's places you don't even think about. Like, you could just be sitting there looking at your like GitHub pull requests, and if somebody merges one, it'll just go purple.
Yeah, I would imagine that at this point it's the opposite. You opt out of software that doesn't use it, like have real-time features, whereas before you would choose software that had real-time features because you kind of take it for granted as you assume it's there.
So I guess we could do a little bit more history. Like maybe you tell us, like what were the things that we used to make this happen in the past? Just because it's fun to like think about all these old names that we don't use anymore.
Yeah, so it's interesting. The original solution was, I think it's Socket.io, a node server that we would run ourselves, and a little algorithm called diff patch match. I remember that quite well. And it worked at the time. The initial solution, I would say, worked 92% of the time. And the problem with 92% of the time is that 8% is extremely difficult to debug because we'd face a lot of timing issues, and we were dealing with a lot. I'd written a massive amount of JavaScript, and my assumption was writing a node server was no different. Turns out I did not understand that I could lock up the entire node server. And that wasn't obvious to me in the beginning, 12 years ago, 14 years ago when we were doing that kind of work.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of issues with it, and we started looking to kind of shed some of the complexity. And so we went with the first thing.
Socket.io was just open source. You just use it. It's
yeah,
free,
we literally deployed it, a little node server. It would run Socket.io. And that was basically the way we ran everything. We would run Socket.io and apply diff patch match, and for the most part, in local testing, it would work. It was extremely hard to debug because you needed latency and all these other things that I really wasn't familiar with at the time on how to debug it and how to deal with it. And so I ended up scrapping portions of it and trying to find a solution. I mean, we went from Socket.io to some other open source service to eventually a service called PubNub that offloaded the real-time connectivity, and that was really helpful. But at the end, and then at that point, so we're kind of trying to merge text code with this algorithm called diff patch match. We then ended up moving to Firebase, and Firebase had, I don't remember the name of the actual solution.
Firebase was cool because it was a real-time database. So it was like a place to store data, but for whatever reason, any client that connected to it, they just made it real time. It was just like a nice feature of Firebase.
It was an open source solution built on top of Firebase where they were supported operational transforms. It's actually still live today.
Oh,
it's
FirePad, wasn't it?
FirePad, yes. There we go.
Yeah.
FirePad. Yeah, it was built on top of Firebase, and they did something called operational transformation, which is one of the two known solutions to collabing real time. I think it's still what Google does for Google Docs. And eventually we have slowly moved from real time, and merging algorithms are kind of tied in our world because it's a huge portion of how we make these things work.
Yeah, that's a good piece of distinguishing. It's not just receive message, thanks for the message, I will now use it. It's receive message, now smushicate it into all the other information you have in some kind of it makes it a lot freaking harder though, because it's
I
not
would say, it's infinitely more difficult. If all we were doing was supporting chat where you didn't have to merge text, especially code, which is just persnickety,
so easy,
right? Slightly harder than English. That would be infinitely easier, but we coupled these solutions. It was always so complex because at the time I just had no experience with it. Diff patch match was almost good enough, but then wasn't. I couldn't understand how to implement operational transforms myself. The CRDTs hadn't come out. We didn't have a solution for that. I mean, this is something we do as a side gig to all the other things that we do. So I never really got to just dedicate myself to that. But I remember working extremely hard to try to make it work. And someone would always find an issue with it, and debugging it and trying to help them was almost impossible at the time.
Yeah, imagine everything that can possibly go wrong with a network is now your problem.
Right.
Extensions and firewalls and VPNs and...
Yeah, and on top of that, because it's real time, you have a real time, up to date messaging system that tells you the state of your network at all times, right? So it's it's almost like you have a status, a status message of like, your network's on, your network's off. And these little glitches that normally like you'll refresh a page or grab a page, you may not even notice while you're on the web. When you're dealing with real-time connectivity, it's like watching a video online. If it starts buffering, you're going to notice instantly that, hey, I've lost my network connection. And so it's a dramatically more complex problem to solve because you're having to make sure that you're connected at all times and recovering from not being connected. Like,
yeah, even
trying
if
to figure out,
like, ooh, there's a better table at the coffee shop, I'm going to close my laptop for a second and move over to that, like, oh, no problem, dude. But we have some work to do now. We have to notice that your network died for a second. We have to notice that it came back. We have to reconnect. We have to reconnect to the right place. We have to make sure that no messages happened while you were away. And if they are, they got to be queued up to be run again. And, thank God. I mean, that's why these CRDTs are so useful, right? It's because they're like deterministically the same thing will happen with.
Yeah, that's, my goodness. Yeah, the CRDTs. So like if you move forward from like, we do diff patch match with like open source solution to connectivity with Socket.io. We then eventually go just, hey, we're not going to do any of it. We're going to let Firebase and Firepad deal with it. And that was honestly great.
Yeah.
Love that solution. Big fans. But, like I learned a lot along the way. So eventually over time, we needed fine-grained control. Like the problem with Firepad is it wasn't a solution that we could integrate with the code that we already manage. And so for the new editor,
that's right. It was code only, right? Because if somebody's like, oh, I changed the title of this pen, I want to change the title of it over here too. That's also a real-time consideration, which Firepad does not help with. So you need something else anyway.
Yeah, and it's Firepad for us has functioned like a black box. Like it just kind of does things through your Firebase database. We didn't want to load the Firebase database. There's a whole thing around that. I wanted more control. I wanted to be able to understand how to, when something goes wrong, how to help someone. So the modern solution for us became, let's use a real-time service, something like Ably, which was excellent. And
Ably, Ably.com. We used them for a long time.
Yeah, we use them. They were great. Honestly, they were just one of our best solutions so that we could focus on just the merging algorithm with CRDTs. We use YJS. That's been absolutely dramatically easier to use, something that we can like reason about and understand. It's still fairly complex because it's just, merging code all the time. But it's much better. It's easier to test. We're more mature as developers. We have a lot more experience with the solution. So it's come a long way. I mean, it's 14 years of trying to support these features. We've learned quite a bit.
Okay, so Ably's now the thing. And now, what is Ably again? I mean, it's just like, it handles real time, but what is abstracted away? Like, what are we buying when we pay Ably?
Right. So Ably, the things that you're abstracting is like the ability to connect, reconnect. They handle all the complexity around networking, but then they also provide you nice features in their SDK where you're able to use their version of authorization. You're able to have special features like the presence of someone. They give you a little bit of history, right? So like if you're running a server that is, if you're not running a kind of a heavy duty server or static site or something like that, Ably honestly is the absolute way to go. You don't have to build this entire infrastructure to support real-time connectivity. The difference with CodePen is we have that massive infrastructure that it takes to support real-time connectivity, and we program a language that is absolutely perfect for it. It's why we chose our backend language, which now is Go. And one of the things that Go excels at is network connectivity, supporting multiple connections. That's just like the bread and butter of Go in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a great language for that, and it's a very of the web kind of language, right? So, but we're like years into our Go world before we're like, maybe we should use Go for like what Go is good at. Kind of, right?
Yeah, honestly, it really, like, so we always knew Go was pretty, like day one, Go was absolutely great for networking, web servers, anything handling many connections with Go routines and things like that. Hyper efficient. The problem for us when we started with Go was our own abilities with Go. Like, it was new to us, and honestly, there's a little bit of like lack of confidence because we come from a Ruby on Rails world where like supporting real-time connections in our perceived, like I perceived as something that was heavy, even though like Ruby on Rails had their solution, but it was kind of like a different set of infrastructure, and it was like it introduced like this next level of complexity. So we always kind of stayed away from it because there was a little bit of like hesitancy around the idea that like, well, we're going to have to do the same thing if we support it in Go. And it turns out, no, it's actually an incredibly simple thing to support. I mean, there's some complexity for our solution because we have to scale horizontally. So we have to make sure that we support, many connections across many different servers. But that's something that we could honestly overcome. But the solution itself is integrated with like everything that we're already doing to serve websites through Go, right? Which is starting to support, when the new editor comes out, it's probably going to support close to like 80% of our requests to the CodePen ecosystem. So we're already going through that system, and adding it on was actually made the solution simpler because of the problems and limitations that we actually ended up encountering when we were using Ably.
I see. Okay, so the point here is Ably was great, used it for a long time, abstracted a lot of complexity, but it turns out the core thing that we need is real time. And the web already has a thing called WebSockets. It's just native, built into browsers, just a thing. You just need to handle it on your own servers, and the perfect servers to handle it are our own Go servers. Right. So it's time to look at like, maybe we like take the dive, get rid of Ably, RIP, great service, whatever, and just do it ourselves. And that opens up these doors to like, okay, well, I mean, to be perfectly frank, it's cool not to have to write another check. Nothing against them, but it saves us money. So that was like part of the factor. But control and stuff is probably even a bigger factor.
Yeah,
right?
we hit these special limitations because of the nature of CodePen. So for example, we wanted to be able to send messages that were like several megabytes over real-time connections, whatever you may think of that. And the problem is Ably has limitations on the size of those messages. So we wrote code to work around those limitations. We basically wrote what I would call an inbox for a real-time connection. So you would if you wanted to send a large message, you would send a post request to our server. The server would store that for your real-time session, and then it would publish a message to everyone on that real-time connection via Ably. They would get a message, and then they would go get the large message that they wanted.
Yeah, would you dump it in Redis or whatever?
Yeah, so it was like, we just would dump it in Redis and store it there, right? So we did things like that. We also would hit limitations on the number of messages that we would send per second, per minute, and where it really, because we wrote initially something that's very chatty, and the problem with that is the entire system, the new system absolutely requires a real-time connection. Like, you have to be connected to real time. Whereas in the old legacy editor, it was kind of an add-on, but the editor itself would work even if your network connectivity to Firebase would glitch out. This new system absolutely relies on it. And so we started hitting these limitations where like, we had the ability to, for example, like lock our entire account, which means that everyone on CodePen would hit a limitation where we had essentially DDoSed ourselves against the Ably service. And there are ways around that. A lot of that is money. And so because of the nature of the users that CodePen supports, we have to be very conservative with the way we spend. So it's like special to CodePen because we're trying to give this real-time connectivity to everyone on CodePen. which is a huge boon, but we have to be very cost conscious. It's like a special situation that we have. There's so many people on CodePen, and we don't want to provide. We find that there's a lot of complexity in trying to differentiate every tiny little feature, and the way we built the system is for it to be scalable for everyone, even free users on CodePen should have a very good experience. Right.
It's got to be high quality, and we're going to we just need to hammer it. And, we've mentioned this for like analytics services and other services that CodePen could buy. We're just in such a weird position where we're a fairly small team, but we have tons and tons and tons of usage. And so sometimes that prices us out of stuff. I mean, maybe we could have made it work with Ably, but it depends on what the service is and how much usage you're trying to get out of it or whatever. It's certainly nice to just not have to worry about that cost.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of these things where, because we think about it this way, because we build the system in a very cost conscious way, we're able to hopefully give a better experience even to free users, right? We're not trying to nickel and dime people along the way and be like, well, if you want real time information, or like if you want to see the editor update when you type something, you now have to go pro, right? Like, we're not trying to provide that kind of an experience, but it's really expensive to run untrusted code for free users on the internet. It's a very expensive endeavor, so we have to be very cost conscious. That was a huge part of it for us.
So if people are understanding, you're in the classic editor everybody knows, right? It doesn't. Just that URL didn't really use real-time that much. You had to go to the live view, which is a different URL, and then it would make a real-time connection and update with live view. Or you could go to the collab URL, then it would connect, or the professor, and then it would connect all this. But in the 2.0 editor, we're not having you jump around URLs like that. That also felt a little janky. It felt like a weird decision, not how modern software kind of works. I don't think anybody would expect that in the past. So now it's kind of like, if you invite somebody, if I invite you to work with me on a pen, this is so cool, such a great 2.0 feature. I just put in your username or your email address. You don't even have to be a CodePen user. You'll be invited. They'll be invited to join. As soon as they do, they'll have access to your pen. If you invite them with an editor role, as soon as they show up on that pen, you're just working together. It's just immediate. It's one of those quotation mark just works quotation marks things, it does just work, which is cool, which means that collab connection needs to be there and working and stuff. And then there's this, there's the code part, which Alex described as very difficult, because it's, you're on line 2, I'm also on line 2, and we're both typing. Like, oh my gosh, good luck resolving all that. Fortunately, CRDTs and YJS have our back there. But then there's different stuff too, like presence. Like, you see in the footer the avatar of the other people that are there with you. That's just this kind of omnipresent thing. Like, hey, are they around? Are they doing stuff? That's just another kind of real-time concern that's in there. You could also grab the URL of the preview and just open it up on your iPad, open it up in a new tab, open it up in Firefox or whatever, a different browser. That built into it, kind of chucked in there, is a real-time connection. If you're pro, that is, because then it's like, oh, I updated the code over in the pen. This other thing's like, oh, I got it. I'll just update this for you too over here. So it's just nice. It's a nice UX. You don't have to go over there and refresh it and all this stuff. It's stuff that I've built in to websites while I work on it. If it's not already a fancy thing that's already got hot module reloading and all that. But like, if it's like some WordPress site or something, it just sucks to not have that. And I always wanted, like, on CodePen is going to have that. You're not going to have to go over there and press Command R like a jerk, Anyway.
Yeah, you want that instant, like keeping that feedback loop tight, to me, is what defines the CodePen experience, right? Like, if we can't do that for you, it's like, well, you might as well be just coding in a local editor where you hit save and get an update. We want to provide that instant feedback as quickly as possible. Like, to me, that's what makes it extra special.
Yeah. And now what's kind of cool, I guess this is maybe obvious, but we have this real-time system. It really doesn't care what you do with it. If we wanted to bring chat back, we'll just bring chat back. We could probably, I love thinking about this in this day and age. We're really good developers that know our app really well, and we have AI assisted help when we need it. We could have chat out by tonight.
Right.
If we decided we wanted chat in CodePen, we could just put it in there. It's just trivial. So it just changes the nature of software a little bit. Of like what you do is like super intentional and agreed upon stuff that enhances the app, not just because you can.
Yeah. The trade-off of saying like, okay, now we have this system is there's a depth of understanding that we didn't have before, right? We've had to like truly dig into it, and 14 years really helps to mature your understanding of the way real time should work. But on top of that, like we can use it for anything. We don't have to manage the number of connections, and because it's affordable, we've done it in an affordable way. And so we can add a real time notification system for news, information, someone followed you, whatever it may be that we find interesting. We no longer have to be limited by what we think we have in the system or what we can afford, our understanding of how to message them. Like once you have mastery of these tools, and I think we've kind of have a reasonable amount of mastery and would be able to expand on it, you can start thinking of it as like, well, now that we know how to use this, like how do we go beyond the norm of whatever we were doing before?
Scale it up, don't you think? I mean, we'll start using it for more
like,
stuff.
At this point, it's, a connection is a connection. And we have the infrastructure. It's not something that we babysit anymore. When we released it, there was some bugs. We thankfully were able to take care of that. They were still difficult.
That's a good segue into this. Like we did start to have an understanding of what Ably did for us in a way, because we just didn't have as much. The trade-off is now we have a new set of problems that become our problems, right? So like, what are they?
Yeah,
I mean, we talked about the network unreliability and stuff, but like,
yeah, and that you go in expecting that, right? But then there's browsers do weird things, right? Like we were doing some domain level validation. We have a lot of developers. The way they were doing domain validation, sometimes the information of what domain you came from, like the referrer, was null. We had to like allow other people to do that. Luckily, the solution is fully integrated with our session authentication system. So like there were things that were simpler. So for example, we authenticate you with your session cookie. That is something that we do for all web requests. But when you add an outside service, it's not fully integrated in that way. You have to do like this other round tripping of authentication. This does that. It's just fully integrated. It's a simple request. There's really nothing to be done, to be honest with you. And so it's fairly simple and straightforward in that way, but we did have to deal with some connectivity issues. The biggest problem was solved by our very own Steven, where the logic that we used to load the connection and make sure that it was ready had some flaws in it. And that was something that was like kind of transparent in the Ably solution, because you just kind of like call their SDK and it just comes back ready to go. That wasn't something that we were doing. And so we had to kind of dig into that. So that was, I would say, the most complex thing. But once we were able to get past that, everything's been pretty hunky-dory. It was clear why that happened. And it was also clear that we had to fix it. But those are the things that Ably hides from you. That was, there was, only, I would say 2 days where I missed it, where I was like, maybe this isn't the best. But
even though those bugs they didn't affect everybody, and they were hard as heck. They were really hard to reproduce, but eventually we got it. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's been hunky dory indeed. It's one of those, like, once you get it, you just don't even worry about it. It just does what it's going to do,
Yeah. Once you've had it out in production long enough and you've dealt with enough of the bug reports, dug into them, it does eventually kind of melt away into the background. And, we did a lot of engineering to make sure that was going to be the case, but we're really happy with it. And now hopefully we just get to kind of move forward and be like, treat it like it's free, which is, we don't count the number of like web requests we're going to make to a server. We just kind of assume it's all going to work. And that's what we wanted out of our real-time solution.
Yeah. Yeah. Woo! That was kind of good. I kind of remember when you were first thinking of this, you're like, we should just do it ourselves, and you're like, it probably, the initial implementation probably was fast. It was probably sub-week, wouldn't you think?
Yeah,
And then,
I was really disappointed that it was going to be a requirement. So we just actually discovered that it needed to be done prior to the new editor release. And I think I was in denial for like 2.5 weeks because I just did not want to replace Ably. It was such a core part of our solution for the new editor. So I think I was in denial longer than it took me to actually implement. But again, it's because we had the infrastructure there and it wasn't as complex as I thought it would be. Yet at the same time, I felt like, okay, we're mature enough. I know Go well enough. There's enough examples, and we can always use AI to help us out here. And it was good. It was something that I'm really happy we did. I wish I hadn't procrastinated as long as I did, but we're really happy with the solution and it's working.
It seems like a
today.
common story around here, like procrastinate on something long enough and then it ends up being okay in the end. I would say that this does factor into a larger industry-wide conversation about, it was probably a month ago now where SaaS is dead was like a hot headline, and we kind of roll our eyes at it sometimes because they're like, we're SaaS and we're doing fine, but we not that we're not careful and trying to stay on top of this kind of thing. But other people might listen to this podcast and be like, well, Ably's dead because they just coded their way out of it. Not saying that we just fired up Claude Code and said replace this service with one or another, but all of us are using AI a little bit at CodePen, and I have to admit it does help us a little bit in speed sometimes. And I'm not that worried about it because you're our CTO. And there's been on this podcast, you've explained it many times about I've never worked with a coder more in my life that like takes things really slow and carefully and understands aspects of them. And if you're having a problem and are freaking out about it, Alex always does the like military slow is smooth, smooth is fast thing. And we like look at every step of why it's happening and write logs and figure out what's going on. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I'm not saying anything about that. I just mean I trust what we're doing and what you're doing as far as infrastructure and code to do this. But we still benefit from being able to be like, yeah, well, also AI help us move a little quicker here. Can you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's for a solution like this, it would still be a gargantuan task to deploy dedicated servers. And if you're not using a language, makes it easy. To do that, like Go really helped us in the sense of like it's efficient, it's speedy, it doesn't get locked up the way I would lock up the main thread in Socket.io. I mean, I'm sure I would still be doing that on Node, and struggling with like random blips where the server would just lock up.
We have a Node server right now we need to look at that's being weird about.
Yeah, still dealing with that problem. But there's lots of little details like that. So like we just happen to have the perfect environment to do that. But the beauty of a third-party service is it just gets you going, and recreating the features is like, that's always a decision that you have to make, and if you're just getting off the ground,
do it? Would you tell somebody else? Or what about, did we do it the perfect way or would we do anything different? And if somebody else was like,
I don't know if we've ever done anything the perfect way.
No, but our trajectory is what it is. You said you would have replaced it a little sooner. Maybe that's true.
Yeah, I definitely would have replaced it a little sooner because we were mature enough 3 years ago to write this. I was just hesitant because of just like bad experiences, right? This is where like experience hurts you and you go, well, I had a bad experience, so I don't want to try that again, And it took years for us to be like, well, okay. No, it's been long enough that we should try it. We have enough experience and confidence in our ability to like.
So part of it is experience, and we have the perfect, server setup. We're not still on Ruby on Rails anymore, which I can't imagine would be nearly as good at this kind of thing as our Go servers are.
Yeah, again, it comes back to cost, right? Because the Ruby on Rails solution would be perfectly fine. The question is, would it be affordable for CodePen, right? Like the number of Ruby servers that we run for, like the disparity in the load that we can run for our Go services versus our Ruby servers is huge.
Yeah, it's wild, right? We have like a whole bunch of Ruby servers just for a shrinking amount of usage.
Yeah, and we still manage to, peak the CPU and memory on those things. So it's a big disparity for us, and we account for costs across the board. Every time we build a feature, we have to consider the cost. We don't just build. And so it was the perfect time for us to do it. Again, I wish I'd done it before, just so that I wouldn't have, like, I'd have that much more experience with the bugs. But yeah, it's been really great.
And somebody else, you know, another startup that wants to add some real-time stuff, would you just be like, dude, just go for it? Or would you be like, you should start with Ably?
It depends, like, how much are you going to use it? You know, like, if you're doing in-app notifications and that's all you care about, like something simple or even like a chat, like, go use Ably. Like, don't waste your time. But if it's a core feature of your service, like, and that's funny, all you're going to do.
Couldn't you imagine the advice being exactly the opposite? It'd be like, if it's vitally important, you should use the reliable thing. Or if you're just doing something small, you should just do it yourself. Okay.
That's the problem.
Right. No. I'm glad.
I mean, that's just that's one guy's opinion. Don't mind me. Been doing it a few years, but you know, it's fine. That's been my experience. Like, we tried not to build the damn thing. We tried to use another service so we could focus on, like, what we do best. And in the end, it still caught up with us. So, it's kind of, I'm going to give this worst answer, which is it depends. I think you should do what we did. But the real answer is going to be it depends. And that's the worst answer, but also the right one.
Yeah, I get it. That's a real classic. All right, well, the final pitch is here. All this is working extremely well on CodePen, and it powers features that you might find useful. The live view feature, although we don't even really call it that anymore because it's just the preview. The preview of the 2.0 editor is just a URL, and you just, if you want to, it's what you're looking at in the editor, but if the URL is just sitting right there, if you want to grab it and go use it elsewhere, go ahead. So it's, you know, we just don't quite refer to it as live view anymore. It's just the preview. But collab view, again, it's not really kind of called that because it's just a little bit more obvious. Like on a Google Doc, there was no name for inviting somebody that had access. There was just a button that said share, and you clicked it and you put somebody in there and it works. Yeah. So that's how it works in this editor too. You can just invite people to your pen and then you just work together in real time. Crucially, in this editor, it doesn't have to be in real time, and it's mostly not. If you invite somebody to work on something with you, much like on GitHub, it's like you don't have to be coding at the same time. You log in and whenever you want and do it. That's how it works in the 2.0 editor. You can be at the same time. If you are there at the same time, then you are coding in real time, and that'll work fine. But those people you invite with editor access, they have editor access all the time. So it's just a really nice feature in that way.
Right.
And real-time powers it all. So yay. Go us and check out the 2.0 editor for sure. Still in beta, although as this podcast gets released pretty quickly, we already have a PR up for pulling down that beta label. So we're not on official launch yet, but we are pulling the beta label off.
Close.
So very, very close.
We're getting pretty close. Yeah, It's exciting. You know, we have literally taken 14 years of knowledge, packed it into every bit of this thing. So it's pretty cool. It's very exciting times for us.
I know. We honestly know a very lot about processing your code and showing it to you in a web browser. Just a ton. You wouldn't believe it.
I wish I knew a little bit less. Yeah, that's where we're at. Like, if I knew a little bit less,
that'd be okay.
That'd be just right.
I feel the same way, but we might as well use our now that we got the skill, we might as well use it. All right, we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye, y'all.